What the hell? Well, you're not on Insta Live now, are you?
I don't know. I'm watching
Look,
you.
It says unable to join.
It's what it is.
It
I
is.
don't know what to say.
It is. I mean, if that's not
talk to Zuckerberg.
That guy. Estoy hasta aquí con él.
He's trying to keep us down.
Let me tell you something. After this election, I am like dying to get off Facebook. I'm just, and I need it. Like, I work with it and the whole 9 yards, but I'm just like, did you see The Social Dilemma on Netflix?
The Social Dilemma? No.
It's this great documentary about, everything's reflecting, but that's okay. It's this great documentary about how all the guys that engineered the social platforms that we enjoy so much now, how they're like, they realize this is really being used for bad and it's unregulated and it's really unhealthy for our democracy. So they're really starting to like question whether or not they should, how you can regulate it in a way that helps people stay in touch, stay informed, but without putting tyrants into power.
Yeah.
And like causing gazillions of, a needless political prisoners or tragedy, and especially misinformation, which I guess kind of leads us into where we're at, right? Our community's particularly being hard hit with misinformation. You're out in LA. Like, do you get any sense of that we're being hit with that?
Yeah. It's really easy. And I think that we're very, we're human beings are make decisions with their tummies and their hearts and not with their frontal lobes. That's why like advertising is effective. That's why movies are effective.
Right.
So it's really confusing when people are really deliberately appealing to our fears, right?
Right.
To be able to, rationalize what the most advantageous thing is to do.
I mean, that's, I don't know if you were on when I said it, but, I heard, I don't know what podcast or whatever I was listening to, they either appeal to our fear or to our hope. And our community in particular, people don't understand the kind of trauma that we went through with the revolution. They don't understand what a disaster the revolution has been and how divisive it was, like from the beginning, like how many families it divided, and not in a like, hey, we're going to divide you way. It was very subtle, neighbors turning against neighbors, family members turning against family members. And it's super traumatic. Like it stays with you. And I think we're more easily manipulated. I think people that have gone through or survived a communist or a socialist regime, when it's married with dictatorship, I think we're more easily manipulated than other people. It's not that we're dumb. It's just that we're traumatized.
Yeah, for sure. But it is, there are a lot of advantages. It makes you pretty skeptical.
Right.
And it makes you aware that, and for me, this is inherited trauma, right?
Right.
I didn't go through it. I watched my family go through it.
Right.
And, but it's important to understand that evil exists in the world and that things fall apart. And I think one of the things I think about most often in the Trump era is this must have been how it fell apart.
Yes.
This must be what it's like when a country falls into a dictatorship or into an autocracy.
Oh my God.
And it's, I'm not trying to be hysterical and saying that's
where
we're headed tomorrow, but it makes it a lot more understandable that other societies could have been susceptible to this, because I think we're all really vulnerable to it. And as a family, having gone through that and watching the destruction of that, it makes you really vigilant, which is why I think you and I talked a little bit on Twitter, an app that I have mastered, I should say,
You
I
no,
know it like the
you're
back
like
of my hand.
a Twitter
On, like,
baller.
Instagram.
I don't know. It's so weird.
But you know, it's a little surprising that our community isn't recognizing those signs and signaling the alarms the way you might guess.
Well, that's
because there's a clear distinction between these candidates. One of them, it believes in the rule of law, freedom of the press, and democracy, right? And
right.
the other is not even a Republican. He's a Trumpist, and he's not he's not interested in the rule of law. And that should alarm all of us.
That's something I'm seeing here a lot in the community, Phil. Like, the ones that are for Biden are like, si esta es una mala copia de Fidel. Like, he is attacking the press. He's making himself the victim. He's empowering his family. He's not putting people that are ready for the job into the job. And then the other half are like, Trump 2020. Like, that's all they say. Trump 2020. And then I say, ven acá, caballero, like, ¿por qué? Explícame why. Like, why are you voting? Just give me one policy point why you're voting for him, one platform you support. And it's like, Trump 2020. And I'm like, my God, guys. Like, in a way, it's embarrassing because, I don't know, Phil, like, I was close to my grandparents. And, you know, like, when you say inherited trauma, it's more than genetic. It's seeing the pain in their eyes anytime Cuba came up. It's knowing what they lost. I've been to Cuba and seeing just, my God, like, how destroyed that country is. You know, it's like seeing how afraid people are to talk, right? Like, people inside of a closed house will be afraid to tell you how they feel about the revolution. And they'll signal like this, or they'll go like this to talk about the revolution, right? And then I have friends here that are afraid to say who they're voting for. And I'm like, we're doing something wrong if we're afraid to talk about our candidate.
For sure. And that we don't recognize that we're slipping into a lot of those problems. And I think that, you know, the problems that we came to America to flee. So I find it important to remind ourselves that, you know, a big portion of our community has felt at home in the Republican Party for a long time for all kinds of reasons.
Right.
I think it's really important to remember that this is no longer the Republican Party. It has become a different thing. And so I do think, like, a lot of this feels like sports. Like,
yes,
this is my team. I've rooted for this team my entire life. They've been good to me. I've been good to them, and they've got this guy, and I'm sticking with my team.
Totally.
I think people are willing to, like, bend their philosophy to match that. The same way we're like, oh, you know, these guys, they're good. You know, Tua, he's going to be great.
Right.
So
here's a possibility.
You like, rationalize it to yourself, and I think that there may be a lot of people that we love that have done that, and that But what is standing for the Republican Party is so different and so dominated by Trump and his cronies that it really is not the same thing.
And I think that's such a good point, Phil. Like, this weekend, like, I hit the streets, which wasn't fun because people are like driving by and screaming at you and flipping you the bird and just like, I would just yell back like Cuba Libre, you know, like Cuba Democrática. But I turned to my friends. I'm like, this isn't a Dolphins game. Like, what are people doing? Like this fanaticism. And, you know, I listen, my grandparents were Reagan Republicans. They love the Republican Party. They love what the Republican Party represented for them. And I would always have wonderful discussions with them. Like, I've always been a Democrat, and I'd always had wonderful discussions with them about policy, about politics, about the parties. And I think what you're saying is, like, you know, we have to understand that it for a long time was a touchstone for Cubans. It's important to remember that because it was tied together to our Cuban identity so tightly. It was woven together so tightly because Republican messaging was so anti-communist, right? But the truth is, it's the Democrats that gave us the Cuban Adjustment Act. It's the Democrats I'm anti-embargo, but it's the Democrats that gave us the embargo. It's the Democrats that allowed wet foot, dry foot. And when Obama took it away, it was because the Republicans wanted it gone. They'd been complaining about it for years. And he did it as sort of a like, okay, well, you still have Cuban Adjustment Act, but we'll remove wet foot, dry foot. And I just, to me, policies are exciting, right? To me, whoever has the best idea, be it Republican or Democrat, that's who I'm going to vote for. What excites you about Joe Biden? Why are you excited to support him?
Well, there's one guy in this race who believes in the kind of democracy that my great-grandfather fought to bring to Cuba. And that's Joe Biden. You're talking about a person who embodies our best values.
Right.
Right? He's a family man. He's a compassionate man. He's been through a lot like we have.
Yep.
He understands trauma. He understands pain. And yet he lives by pretty strong values. I mean, he's been really hard to tear down because basically people understand him to be a good guy. Right.
Right.
And a good guy who wants democracy to work the way it should. And he wants it to work in a bipartisan way. He wants it to be the thing that when Cuban democracy started, the reason that they looked to the United States was because it was working okay.
Right.
And so let's elect someone and a party who are interested in restoring our faith in that system. And so fundamentally, it's a guy who believes in the same things that I believe in.
Right.
Which is that this is a pretty good system of government. It's not flawless, but it's pretty good.
Right.
And if we all, and that basically that America is a place with great values, that Americans aim to be their best selves. But Americans are led. All people can be led to something that's less than what their potential is. And I think that we really understood the value of leadership in the last 4 years.
Absolutely. I mean, something
when
like
you're led in the wrong direction, people will follow. And
right.
Imagine the opportunity to have real leadership in the White House, and to have and down the ballot, to have folks that really, because we are facing real problems. We're talking as Cuban Americans, but as Americans,
right,
we face big challenges, and you're going to need folks with big, interesting, smart policy to tackle them. Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Phil.
No, I was just going to say, we're in South Florida, right? I live on the West Coast. We're on fire.
Yeah.
South Florida is underwater. Our planet is getting warmer. I know what it's like in Miami in August.
Right.
It can't get worse. We cannot let it get worse.
It's brutal.
And Joe Biden understands and acknowledges that the planet is warming and is going to do something about it. The same with our healthcare.
Yeah.
Florida became a hotspot because the federal government and its acolytes, including Florida's governor, totally mismanaged, deliberately lied about COVID, and look at the results. I mean, just some basics. He believes in science. He believes in the rule of law. He likes people.
Right.
That's a pretty good start.
That's the basics of what we're hitting. To me, that's what's so impressive, Phil. It's that for me to have to say, I'm voting for Biden because he believes that 2 and 2 is 4. It seems silly to have to say it, but leadership, it's interesting because people say, DC doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who the president is. But we're seeing South Florida's lost 3,000 small businesses since COVID started. We had our first case in the States the same day South Korea had their first case. They have less than 1,000 deaths, and they reopened months ago. They have not lost the billions that we've lost in our economy. But we're supposed to be leading the world. We're supposed to be the beacon of light. And yet it's I feel like somebody painted the lighthouse windows black, and we're just burning under that light going around. And with the people, something like you wearing a mask, it astounds me when people don't wear a mask, or the fact that anybody would stop, like the fact that Trump stopped the USPS from sending out 5 masks to every home. I mean, can you imagine?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, if he would have done that, like I know 6 people that have died because of COVID, and it's astounding the difference, the different people say, no, it's a virus. Yeah, I know it's a virus, but it's also a hurricane. You still put up shutters, right? You don't say the winds aren't coming and stand outside and bark at it. I mean, you might if you're in Hialeah, but just kidding, Hialeah. You know I love you. But like things like now, my mom's getting ready to retire in a couple of years, and if Trump has his payroll tax cut, she won't have her Social Security in 2023. And people don't think of like how it affects us all in really direct ways, you know. But
look, this Supreme Court nominee,
oh my God,
will rule on a case,
yeah,
a week after the election about pre-existing conditions.
Right.
And then she may also be the deciding vote in our election. Right. So this, like you say, this stuff is really important. You know, you got at something that I'm preoccupied with, which is it's important. I'm assuming, you know, we're preaching to the converted on this chat, but we need to be really strategic about how we go out into the world and try to represent the affirmative case for Joe. Right. And the kind of person that he is. I think that is one of the missing pieces because Trump gets so much airtime, and we're gonna see a lot of Joe Biden next week at the debate. Right. But I think the more you see this person in action, more you see his steadiness, his strength, right? His willingness to be honest. Yes. Not only about his own personal pain, but just about the facts on the ground. Yeah. And you're just talking about someone whose values really closely align with ours and with our communities. Right. I agree. Somebody just asked, how do you talk to somebody in Miami? I mean, when I'm talking to somebody that I know might have a conversation, I always just start with questions personally. Like, oh, why are you supporting your candidate? You know, like, I want to know what's important to people. And then if I see like, wait, but that doesn't make sense, I'll point out like, okay, you want strong borders, but do you agree with women being forced to have hysterectomies before they get thrown back to their country? And I think facts are important, but I also think listening's important. I think some and compassion, you know, because these are our, you know, abuelas, and these are our primas, and these are people that are in our lives, and you're not, you know, it's interesting, you know, with Justice Ginsburg passing away, one of the things that everybody said about her was how collegial she was with the other justices. Right. And how close she was with people on the other side of the aisle. Right. That is the thing that Joe Biden represents. Yes. That kind of, and one of the things she said is that it allowed me to be persuasive. Being a brat never really made me any more persuasive. So, and that is one of the things we need to be able to do, is to persuade one another that this is a better representation of what we all collectively care about. You have to talk about strong borders. One of the things that makes borders strong is when you invite the best and brightest from other countries into our community. Right. Look at what we have done in Miami. Look at the benefits of welcoming Cuban Americans into South Florida and what has been built. Because when my uncles got to America, they got a loan so they could go to LSU and become engineers. Right, right. They had legal status. That when we welcome people and give them a clear path to citizenship, we make our own country stronger. Absolutely. It's not that we are doing this because it's altruistic. Altruism is a terrible motivator for characters and for voters. Right, people right. Are motivated by their self-interest. When I see someone in a movie that I'm writing that is motivated by altruistic ends, it's a disaster. Yes. Nobody relates to that. That's not how people are. Right, right. what is in it for me, my family, my community? And what's in it for us, right, is that we have is that the best and brightest from around the world who would stop at nothing to come here because they knew there was a better way.
Right.
That makes our country stronger, and it has for 200 years.
It's what's made us innovators, because we've literally taken the best from around the world, and we're like the world's best incubator.
We are the best place in the world to have an idea.
Yeah. Yes.
And profit from it. And so, look, in my business, we hire animators from all over the world, and often we have to testify to their exceptional talent. And that is why we're giving this job to somebody from another country instead of an American citizen.
Right.
And it's a lot of folks from Canada, a lot of folks from Europe, and increasingly all over the world. And I'm always mystified that we have to justify giving somebody a green card who is exceptionally talented and wants to make their life here.
Right. Right. And I would even argue, Phil, like even the people that aren't necessarily exceptionally talented, but just want to make their lives here because they want to be a part of the community. They want to work at whatever they work at. I mean, our economy always benefits from having positive migration. It's something that even the numbers bear it out. And I really like what you said about altruism, because I mean, piety makes me itch from the inside out. Like I see it and I want to kill it. I want to kill it. Like we're not like that. And it just, oh my God, few things set me off like a rocket than that smile. But that's a really great way of putting it, because if you have to look at, well, what's in it for me, there's so much more in it for us. If we go with a candidate like Biden, if we're willing to put ourselves out there, if we're willing to sabes, como dicen los cubanos, dar la cara, you know, like that's, I am excited about seeing more of Joe this week with the debates, because it's one thing to basically call him the boogeyman when you're not clicking on the links of his campaign appearances. It's quite another when he's right there in front of you and you just, the decency pours out of this guy. Like I have so many friends that have worked with him and that just adore him, are like beyond loyal, because they know the kind of person he is, the kind of human being he is. I'm excited.
He's not a wimp. He is
at all.
Tough.
Right.
And you know, and if you think about like the critiques that are being ginned up by the right about this guy, I would take his mental acuity over Donald Trump's any day.
Yes.
He can read things. He can read. He's literate. He's got that's a plus on the Biden column.
Right.
He can process information and digest it and form an opinion
on the spot. On the spot, he can do that.
Yeah,
totally.
And the guy is really strong. I think people are attracted to Trump's bluster because it disguises him as someone who has strength. Right. But it is instead it's obviously an exhibit of his great weakness and insecurity and the fact that he doesn't have the goods. Right. Joe Biden has the goods. Right. He's strong because of it.
When you don't have the goods, you need the bluster. Another thing,
Listen,
Phil. Yeah.
If you call me a liar, right? And I am telling the truth, I'll just stop and I'll explain to you why I'm telling the truth, and I'll show you all the facts and I'll give you all the figures and we'll figure it out. If you accuse me of lying and I'm lying and I don't have any of those things, right, then I'm just going to say, how dare you? And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to bluster and I'm going to talk. And that's how you can recognize con men, right, like Trump. Right. Because he doesn't have the goods. Right. There's no backup. There's not a receipt in sight. No. It's all in the dumpster fire. All the receipts are in the dumpster fire. Phil, last thing I want to touch on with you, because I know you support Black Lives Matter as I do. The other day I had this conversation with a shopkeep, small little store where I get like my nail files and my eyebrows to live up to my Cuban my Cuban beauty standards, right?
And the Argentinian guy, more or less my age, and he was just like terrified of Black Lives Matter. And I was like, what, why? And he said they were going to come and break the windows of his store. And I was like, I was at the Black Lives Matter protest. Can you imagine me breaking the windows of your store? And he just didn't have an answer for it. He's like, no, I'm not a Trumpian, but I'm not a Trumpian, but can you talk a little bit about why Black Lives Matter and that movement matters to you?
I mean, it's tough because to me, a lot of this has become self-evident. Somebody said to me, we're fighting for our lives, right?
Yeah.
We're being hunted. And it is when you recognize that we have a 400-year-old festering wound that has never been addressed in any formal way, or informal for that matter.
Right.
And that it is such a deep part of the American story, and a deep part of the American success story, and yet we haven't dealt with it. You understand better how we have the problems that we do. And when you understand the 1619 project that the New York Times put out was so illuminating and so brilliant.
Yeah.
In recasting our history, right? And when you see it like that, this all becomes really understandable.
Right.
And I guess I just look in our entertainment business, we spend a lot of time thinking about this, and the better we are at representation and at inclusivity, the more work we realize we have yet to do.
Right.
We have a lot of work to do. And
right.
What you are witnessing are people demanding that we address this long festering problem. I think you understand. It's easy to feel. I understand why people can misunderstand this as something threatening, especially when they're being deliberately misinformed by outside extra governmental actors.
Right.
My least favorite kind of actor. I like the you kind of actor.
Thank you, Phil. I like the me kind of actor too. Those other ones suck.
But I think what is inspiring about it is that the Black community have been standing up for America and American democracy for generation after generation. They have believed in this place and called it home in spite of the treatment.
Yeah.
And they are, in every walk of life, from the NBA to the entertainment business to the folks that are on the ground protesting peacefully and organizing, developing policy, and doing the work, right?
Right.
Those folks are standing up for us. Those folks are doing the work to make our country and our democracy better. And it is insulting to think that we would somehow be cast that movement as something that was destructive. It's quite the opposite.
That's actually a beautiful articulation, Phil, of why we all need to be out on the streets and supporting this movement unapologetically.
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 And it's not. It doesn't. It's cool and important to protest and be counted and to display the passion, but it's not enough.
Right.
You know, it's like, if you care about this stuff, you need to be organizing. You need to consider running for local office.
Right.
You need to ask what you can do within your community to address the problems directly and find ways to communicate with our elected representatives and really think about what the policies are that would be better.
Yeah. And you know what? Now I'm going to pitch my sister, who's doing Miami Freedom Project, who's
Cool.
who's trying to do this work, Phil. She's trying like to interconnect our communities. Like she wants people in Miami to understand that the well-being of Liberty City is as important as the well-being of Key Biscayne, is as important as the well-being of Coral Gables, is as important as the well-being of Overtown, of North Miami, of Kendall, and really connect us. Because in a way in Miami here, we can very easily be very segregated without even meaning to be. And all of our stories, we come from such an incredibly rich, historical, weird little island, right? Miami. I like to tell people we're all pirates, but it has such history here, and I think that I think what an opportunity in this moment to be alive in this moment, to really listen and really understand what privilege is, and listen, and to put our bodies on the line and shoulder to shoulder with our Black brothers and sisters and say, you know, the problem isn't with the Black community, it's with the white community.
This is a white problem.
This is a white problem.
This is a white problem.
Exactly. This has nothing to do with them.
And white Hispanics have to own it.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of work to do.
And it is exciting because when you see that something is broken, you also have, when you see you're wrong, when you realize, wow, I've fallen into these attitudes, you have the opportunity to fix it. And like you said, fixing it at the local level is integral. This is where we can vote to make the most difference. And this is where we can recognize our neighbors and say, hey, how can we support each other? Like, how can I be there for you? How can I listen to you? I'm going to need you to be there for me. It's about mutual understanding and mutual aid, and really just seeing each other, right? Like stepping out from the mirror and looking at ourselves and just really seeing each other and understanding that we're all struggling. And if we just kind of like cut it out and work together, we can all really just leapfrog over a lot of the problems that plague us.
You know, I want to encourage people to understand the American story as inclusive of these other dimensions of our story. That the Black story in America is an American story. It's our story.
Right.
It is our shame. Right. We've all decided to live here. Right. You know, a lot of ancestors of the Black community did not decide to live here, but they decided to stay.
Right.
And it's our story. This immigrant story is our story. It is not some other person's problem.
Right, right.
It is like our community. I think a lot about this because in the entertainment business, we're working really hard on inclusivity and on representation on the screen. But one of the things I think is not, and often we are shaming one another for not doing enough, which is correct thing to do, especially because a lot of these are big companies that need to be accountable to the audience. Sure. But furthermore, I'm not sure we do a good enough job at making the affirmative case for what is to be gained, right, and how much further enriched our entertainment will be when we recognize that the American story includes all of these other stories and communities. Right. But I always want to remind people, what if all of your music came from one place and only white people were in charge of it? Come on, Phil. How crummy it would be.
It's the crappiest movie ever. Jesus.
It would be terrible. Like, music comes from Memphis and New Orleans and Miami. Our American music comes from California and the Hollywood Hills and all of these, and Boston and New York and on and on. You know, the DC area punk. What if our entertainment was as diversified and rich as that? And that's what we should be going for.
And it just makes it infinitely more exciting. You know, when I do teaching artist work down here in Miami, a lot of the stuff we teach is about diversity and understanding and all that. And I tell all the kids, okay, I've given you a white piece of paper. Do you want white crayons or do you want a big box of a bunch of different colors? You know, and they all want the big box of a bunch of different colors, right? And I just think life is so much better when you are open to everything and you just take everything and listen. You're not always going to connect with other things, but you're never going to be bored.
and look, and movies will be better, and they'll make more money.
Yes.
And that is what I always try to preach here. It is good business, and it is good creatively. And I think that extends to the rest of the nation. That how much stronger, more vibrant, interesting, and powerful we can be.
Right, right. I mean, equity leads to excellence. There's just no question about it. It's been proven time and time again. Phil, I've taken up enough of your time. It's such a joy to like talk with you through like my phone, through the phones and the whole.
I'm so sorry. This is so dumb. Next time we'll do a tech check ahead of time. Do you want to see my mustache?
Yes, please.
It's really gross. Look at that. It's a COVID mustache.
That is, I almost have one as a Cuban woman, I gotta say. That is perfect, Phil. I'm finishing this sound mix, and I was given permission to grow it until we finish. Nice, nice. Guys, everybody, please, anything you see with Phil Lord, Chris Miller's names on it, go. You're always gonna feel great coming out of it. You're always gonna laugh, and you're always gonna be touched. Phil, it's so nice to finally like meet you like without being through Twitter. Follow Phil on Twitter because every movie advice he has like is amazing. Instagram's telling me I'm done. Phil, thank you so much. Guys, vote Biden and let Cubanos con Biden know if you have any questions. Bye. Thank you, Phil.
Bye.